Hello, everybody, and welcome to this LIAMforum session titled From the Innovators, Game-Changing Possibilities. My name is Weatherell with ReThink Mining and ReThink Mining Ventures. I will be your moderator today. And we have joining us, we have Dustin Angelo, Greg Hanna, and Josh Clarke. Welcome, gentlemen.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
We're trying to have an interesting discussion about the passion behind, basically you're doing startups and you're innovators and getting your perspective on these types of things. So to get started, instead of doing introductions and reading long bios, I'm going to ask each of you to introduce yourselves with three things. First is your name, your affiliation. So what company? I don't want titles. I don't want the sales pitch. And who was your 18-year-old self? And before we get started, we'd like to welcome David Zhen Yin as well as a fellow panelist from Stanford. Okay, so to start off, Dustin, introduce yourself, please.
All right, well, welcome everybody. My name is Dustin Angelo. I'm with Novamera. And my 18-year-old self, well, I was just going into university from the New Jersey shore on the East Coast of the United States. So, I had really no idea that I would ultimately end up in a startup and mining of all places, growing up on the Jersey shore on the beach. So certainly a lot of twists and turns to get here. But yeah, that's me.
Awesome. Thank you, Dustin. Josh.
Yeah, my name is Josh Clarke. I work for Destiny Copper, and my 18-year-old self is somebody who knows they like science and is interested in the field, but has no idea where they'll land, essentially. But just starting university and, hoping for the best.
Awesome. Greg.
Hi, my name's Greg Hanna, CEO of Destiny Copper. And at 18 years old, I knew I wanted to go into business. I've always enjoyed the entrepreneurial side of business, but I didn't know what course it would take. Probably if I'd known at the time, I would have run in another direction. A lot of challenges along the way.
Awesome, thank you. And David, name, affiliation, and your 18-year-old self.
Hello, everyone. I'm David, research scientist at Stanford. When I was 18 years old, I was just admitted to college. I had no idea what major I should choose. I actually chose a major called petroleum engineering that has nothing to do with AI and machine learning, but I ended up with founding this AI and machine learning group at Stanford for mineral exploration. So my lesson is that, the future is not a single choice, it is multiple choices, and have fun and enjoy the uncertainty part of it.
Awesome. Thank you, David. I like what you gentlemen said, because in my case, I still don't know what I want to be when I grow up, which is true, right? You're pivoting all the time and opportunities present themselves. So this panel, the four of you, we're talking about game-changing possibilities. Okay, so what I'd like to hear from each of you is what's so game-changing about what you're doing, whether it's been done or where you think it could go. Okay, so what's so game-changing about whatever you're doing? So Greg, let's start with you.
So what we've developed over the last 8 years is a clean tech way of extracting copper from waste solutions, waste streams, and even new PLS. Josh can go into a little bit more of the chemistry, but essentially we're putting recycled iron into a solution with our additive. So we've just got our US patent, which is really exciting. And that causes a chemical reaction where the copper crystals grow, but they're so loosely adhered, they just fall to the base of the tank. So very easy separation of copper, high purity copper. I'll let Josh go into a little bit more of the chemistry.
Yeah.
And Josh as well, just while you're talking, you're a young guy just out of university.
Yep.
Why is this so game-changing for you? Why did you jump?
Yeah, so especially jumping from academia into the startup field is not common for a lot of my peers. I think there are inherent challenges with working for a startup. You have to wear multiple hats, and you have to be able to transition from multiple different jobs fairly quickly and kind of juggle a lot.
Josh is being polite.
But there is a lot of satisfaction, a lot of fulfillment in that if you're somebody who enjoys problem solving generally. And I find that I'm that type of person who gets a lot of enjoyment from that. So if you find in your high school or university and high school career, and as you do various jobs, if you enjoy the not moving from thing to thing and kind of working on different problems and challenging situations, then yeah, startups are a way to kind of scratch that itch, get into the field a bit there.
And with respect to Destiny, again, you're a young guy, just finished PhD, university. You joined Destiny, but what's so game changing as a young person? Why was it game changing for you?
Yeah,
Craig's been in this business for years. You're new and looking at it, oh wow, look at the possibilities. Why? What are those possibilities?
Yeah, so it's a young company, as as it implies the name startup, right? So there's lots of room for growth, and you aren't being just slotted as like a peg into a hole. You're kind of working to expand an operation and you have, because of that, more input. There's more responsibility and there's more risk, and obviously the way things progress. But you definitely can feel responsible for more of the operation when you are working for a startup. So that appeals to me specifically. But I understand, like, my wife is totally different. She's the exact opposite to me. She likes to have like clearly defined goals every morning and work through a process systematically. So it really comes down to the type of person you are and what appeals to you.
Awesome, cool. So David, you're doing something a little bit different at Stanford. And again, this is about game-changing possibilities. So what do you think is game-changing about what you're doing at Mineral X at Stanford?
Right. So first of all, Mineral X is actually the first group focusing on the critical minerals over the past 30 years at Stanford. And we are actually the first also at Silicon Valley. And the reason why we do it, because there's going to be a huge demand of those energy transition metals, copper, lithium, nickel, and cobalt, because we want to convert our combustion engines to electrical vehicles. We want to build a reliable electric grid. And we want to make those things affordable to everyone, not just the people who are rich, but the people also from the developing countries.
Exactly.
And to do that, I mean, if you're thinking like finding those enough materials to sustain the whole world, you need a powerful metal detector to find where does those material deposit. And we develop a machine learning AI engines to ingest all the data in the public domain and find out the most probable area and narrow down the target. And that kind of enables a fast development of the material supply. In that sense, it's going to accelerate the energy transition, bring down the cost, and we think that is the game transition or the game-changing angle we are looking at it.
That's kind of cool too, because you're talking about finding deposits without doing any drilling, just doing data. And
exactly.
Then we go to Dustin, who's doing some really interesting things with Novamera that kind of ties into what you had just said. So Dustin, Novamera, game changing. What's so game changing about Novamera?
Yeah, so as Dave was talking about, they're finding deposits, but once you know where they are, sometimes they're difficult to extract. And in Novamera, what we've done is we've developed data-driven hardware and software solutions that enable mining companies to surgically extract ore and leave that excess waste in the ground. So our tools are the enabling technologies. They're not the drills themselves, but they're the tools behind the drills to make them smart and surgical and precise. And so we can help mining companies now take conventional drilling equipment and essentially turn them into surgical devices. And it's so game changing because right now that's not being done. I mean, there's traditional open pit mining, there's underground mining. You're using traditional drilling and blasting, loading and hauling type methods. And this is about being highly precise and surgical to be able to remove a lot of excess waste, reduce greenhouse gas emissions, just have a smaller footprint for mining overall. And so, you can essentially kind of flip the business model. All these, you got lots of mega projects out there that they're very difficult to, first of all, find those deposits and then permit those deposits and get the social license to actually be able to operate them. And so what we're proposing is technology now allow mining companies to take smaller deposits. There's a lot of small scale deposits around the world, whether it's energy transition metals, precious metals, industrial metals, that are not being mined, that are needed for this transition to fill the supply gap, and they're being left behind because there just isn't a method to take them out of the ground. And so our technology now enables a new method, and now we can, potentially access a lot of these smaller kind of narrow type deposits. And so, you're introducing a whole new business model and a whole new kind of supply to the market.
So you're essentially what you're doing with your technology in the company is turning a non-viable deposit, because not economical or whatever reasons, to something that's totally viable. So
Yeah,
increasing the supply chain. Yeah.
Exactly. I mean, in these deposits, they exist as standalones. They exist within current mines. Mining companies know about them. They're either within their project area and they're just separate deposits they can't mine, or there's zones within their existing mines. They're just passing by as they're going deeper. So there's just lots of opportunity there to add to that supply.
There may be opportunities for you and David to collaborate as well.
Oh yeah, totally.
My God,
yeah.
really? You
Yeah.
find the deposits and you go mine them, right?
Exactly.
And then later on, maybe Destiny Copper. So gentlemen, you're all on a path of startup-ish, or in your case, David, just a little bit different. You're in academia doing things a little bit differently, but still working with a lot of the mining companies. So everybody knows that startup world, and Greg and Josh, you already alluded to this. It's not easy, right? It takes a certain type of person. It takes a lot of stamina, willpower, passion, desire to actually achieve something. So I'm kind of curious, what motivated you to do what you're doing? Like, why are you doing this? Josh, you touched on this a little bit, but we'll tease that out a little bit more. What motivated you to do what you're doing, and why are you still here? Like, if it's been in the startup world for 5 or 10 years, you're still here. Why are you still here? Like, young people listening are going to want to know, why are you doing this? What's it take? So David, let's start with you.
Oh, sorry. Why I'm doing this? Well, the reason why I'm doing it is because energy transition is such a big mission out there, and there has to be all the stakeholders, all the person who can contribute has to contribute to it, and there also has to be a specific problem we look at and also fits our expertise or fix our knowledge the best. And we figure out it was actually talking to the industry, talking to the academia, and talking to the people who are being impacted by the climate change. And it's kind of like several years of consolidation of research, and we figure out this specific angle that we want to do this. I hope this is clear. Yeah.
No, this is awesome, David. And like you talked about some of the AI machine learning tools you've created, you're working with the industry. Is there any plans, or can you talk about this? Any plans to potentially turn that into a startup and spin it out? Or are you going to stick with doing a service, or you're not sure?
Oh, our plan is not to spin it out as a commercial or as a company. The reason why we don't, because we want to establish a neutral space that all the stakeholders, the industry, academia, environment groups, social groups, local representatives, government can sit in together and talking to each other in one room. And that neutral space has to be academia or without any, not being influenced or impartial. And so if we go startup, we couldn't do that effectively. Well, we actually have 2 recent graduate PhD students whose name are Tyler Hall and Alex Miltenberg, who just started their company called ExploreTech.ai. What they are doing is converting the AI part of to a commercial product. But generally at AminoX, we are not going to be a spinoff.
So a message to a young person is you can still be, creating these game-changing possibilities and innovating in the industry, but still stick in academia by doing something different.
Yes.
Really cool. Dustin. So I've had the pleasure of knowing Dustin for a couple of years now. I know a little bit about your history, but a little bit of that, like, why are you doing this? Like, you went from a different role running a company to startup. I'd like to hear and I'm sure some of the young people out there would like to hear your story on what led you to this.
Yeah, so I was running a gold mining company. I was the CEO of a gold mining company out in Newfoundland for about 9 years. And our company now is the result of solving a problem. You know, it's the classic startup, product market fit type situation where, you're looking to solve a problem. And at our company at Anaconda Mining, where we had a deposit that we couldn't mine using conventional methods, and we were seeking a solution, and we ended up trying to figure that out ourselves and partnered with a university to be able to come up with the idea that ultimately became Novamera. And what we realized quickly was that the problem we were solving was one that was kind of prevalent throughout the entire mining industry. And we sort of had this aha moment where we thought we were just living in this little bubble in Newfoundland and realized that there was an opportunity here to develop and commercialize a technology for the entire mining industry and kind of make a really big impact. And we decided to take that technology and actually spin it out of Anaconda Mining. And we created Novamera and became a startup. And that's kind of how that evolved. Personally, I've always been interested in running businesses and starting businesses. And I'm an accountant, but I sort of had the entrepreneurial bug early on. So despite being somewhat conservative, doing a lot of entrepreneurial things, particularly in tech and in mining, you're really stepping out of your comfort zone. But there's a lot of opportunity within mining, and mining needs technology. They need innovation. It needs to advance. It is now on the forefront, on the front lines of the energy transition. And it needs a lot of brain power, and it leads a lot of creativity and new ideas. And we just saw ourselves as an opportunity to be able to do that and take this technology from pretty much like a sleepy gold mining company and bring it out on the world stage.
Well, so you got bitten by the bug and jumped from a relatively cozy position to, hey, let's see where we can go, because the potential to change the world essentially is why you did it. And you're still smiling too. This has been quite a journey. You still got a big smile on your face.
Yeah, it's a big challenge, but it's been rewarding so far, and it's amazing to kind of see the incremental progress that you make. And then after a couple of years, you look up and say, wow, you really made huge steps. And we've got a long way to go still, but it's very encouraging, to be able to go on this journey and figure this out and make a difference.
And what you said too, is a really important message, especially for young people in universities, is like, you're an accountant, but you're running a tech company in mining. Like if you're not an engineer, that doesn't mean you can't run a tech company, right? You can be a lawyer, you can be somebody else. One of the one of the most prolific successful software company startups many years ago was run by 2 psychologists. So it's a matter of the passion, getting bitten by the bug, and seeing the opportunity, right?
Yeah, and just when you're building a company, a startup, especially, like no one person is going to make that company succeed. You need a really strong team. So you're not going to have all the skill sets within one person. So one of the greatest skill sets that you should have as a founder or CEO of a company is the ability to hire and bring on those skill sets that you need at the right times to be able to grow your company. And that's probably more important. It doesn't matter whether you're an accountant or an engineer or a psychologist or whatever. Like it's whatever your background is, you got to have the ability to be able to build a team.
Yeah, awesome. And Greg, I saw you nodding because you mentioned this a little bit in the past, and it's a perfect segue, right, about building the team, et cetera. So from your perspective, Greg, like what motivated you to do this? Like a little bit of background. Dustin was the CEO of a mining company, then jumped to a startup. A little bit about your background. What motivated you to do this Destiny Copper startup?
Sure. So I was originally from South Africa and moved across 8 years ago. And I'd done a number of startups, mostly in the real estate play. We had developed high-rise real estate. So I'd always been, from kind of like leaving high school, I'd always been fascinated and got involved in entrepreneurial programs of different sorts, all sorts of different ideas. Some worked, some didn't, and you learn as you go. And when towards the end of living in South Africa, and even now, they battled the populations outgrown the power production. So it's quite tough in terms of people are looking for ways of producing all sorts of things using less energy. And so the very early thinking came from South Africa. We thought this concept could work. It needed a lot of work, and we brought it across to North America, to actually Brock University. That's where we set up. So this is we've come full circle with Josh graduating from Brock University. Our labs were based at Brock, and Professor Ian Brindell helped us in the early stage. And from there, what really drove us was the passion to assist the change to clean energy and the green transition and the electrification of everything. Copper would be really, it would be in huge demand. And our feeling is, up until now, there hasn't been a really environmentally friendly way to extract this copper. So it's the passion to make this transition that's kept us going. Because there's many times when you're pulling your hair out, and the uphill of, are we ever going to be able to solve this problem? It's such a big problem. The passion is that we're actually doing something really important. We're helping the world change to a greener way of producing copper, and ultimately greener energy too.
So that's awesome what you said, because it was resonate by all four of you, right? Change the world is kind of a theme that's one of the reasons you're doing what you're doing. But Greg, you said something really interesting. You said you built real estate companies in South Africa, and now you're running a mining startup. So was that a bit of that sounds like a bit of a leap? Were you a bit cautious, or like a bit was there a bit of trepidation before you said, I'm going to go from real estate to mining?
Sure, there's always risk in learning a new industry, but that's kind of what fires me up. And I decided we had sold out of our real estate, and decided I needed a new challenge. And this seemed like a really exciting space. If you're willing to learn, I think and get, like Dustin just mentioned, bring on the right people, I think anything's really possible. Yeah.
Yeah, and two quick things to follow up on what Dustin said and something else you said as well. The idea came from South Africa. You brought it here. Why here? Why did you come here? Why not do it in South Africa? Why not do it in Australia? Why Canada?
Canada, we feel, is one of the best places in the world to launch a startup in the green space. The amazing government programs, the universities are incredible. We were looking at the US, and ultimately Canada landed up being the winner. So we feel it's a real launching space, nice jurisdiction politically most of the time, and everything seems to work. Yeah.
And you and Dustin both talked about team and hiring the right people. Could you touch on that a little bit? As a startup, you start with one or two people in a garage or in a mining company or somewhere else. But a little bit of advice, or what that journey is like when trying to find the right people as your startup grows?
I think there's got to be a synergy or a click with the people, and I think we experienced that with Josh on day one. We just knew it was going to work, and respect for each other, and people that are willing to kind of stand out on a limb a little bit. It is risky. A startup is risky. Raising fundings, there's times when it's tougher, other times when it just flows really nicely. But you got to be bringing people that are open-minded and willing to grow. We can literally work on 20, 30 different things during the day. You're not focused on solving one problem all the time. Yeah.
Yeah, I think Josh alluded to that. One of the reasons you're in the startup, because you're not doing the same thing every day. Josh, is there anything else you wanted to add about your journey and why you're doing this? What motivated you to go from PhD to startup, which is sometimes usual it's usual in telecommunications and microelectronics. It's not really that usual in
mining.
Yeah.
I think the defining moment for me was actually an industry tour where we went through a large mining company, and I won't say which company, but it was a factory tour. And while it was incredibly impressive, just the scale of the production and the size of everything, it was really interesting to see that a lot of the fundamental chemistry was still quite legacy. And a lot of things haven't caught up to what I was doing during my PhD in lab in terms of, small scale beaker size chemistry. So immediately there's a gap that's quite apparent, between where research and chemical academia is and where the industry is. And startups are a great way to bridge that gap and begin to kind of bring new ideas to the commercial scale.
That's cool. Your back or your PhD is chemistry?
Yes, that's right. Yeah, in inorganic chemistry, but yeah.
We got two of us on the call. Awesome.
There we go.
Anyway, and we're both in mining. Really cool. So Dustin, like this is you've been on a journey for a while, like doing this sort of thing, coming up with new innovative stuff that's going to change the world and help with the energy transition and hopefully attract new kids and everything else. It's quite a journey, right? And you've probably made pivots, and maybe you're making pivots now. I don't know. So can you share a little bit some of the challenges, the pivots you made, some of the opportunities that have arisen because of this? Because you've been doing this for a while.
Yeah,
You're still smiling.
That's a lot to unpack.
Yeah.
in
2.5 minutes.
Yeah, I mean, I would say challenges alone could probably take a full day's discussion here. I think Greg alluded to probably the biggest challenge of startups is raising capital, right? Like, you're always in this kind of cycle of having to, have a runway for like 12 to 24 months, depending on how long you can stretch your money. You're typically not going past that because you're trying to raise, it's that delicate balance of raising enough money to keep going and reach milestones to demonstrate value for the next financing round, but not raising too much money because then you're diluting too soon, right? And you've got to work with shareholders as well. Some of if you have venture capital investors, they're very cognizant of that. So by virtue of that, you're kind of always on this, let's call like 18-month cycle. So you've got to hit these milestones. And it's very challenging to be able to do so. So it's that kind of cycle that makes it tough. And then what you're ultimately trying to do is get to that point of finding that product market fit, right? And then once you've got that, it's kind of like the holy grail for startups, because that's when you really start to figure out the formula and things start to go. But that's a very challenging time, and you're essentially trying to fail fast and fail cheaply to get to that point and reach it before the money runs out, right? Yeah. And I don't want to make it sound like it's dire, but it's one of those things where like that's just the life of a startup, and it takes a certain personality to be willing to do that. And what comes with that is the pivots, like you said, is you're constantly testing and trying things to figure out what's the right way to go. And so we've had some small pivots and big pivots. For us, I think getting back, market is so important, right? And trying to find that early adopter market. And we first started off with like the large cap major producers, and kind of in a nutshell, kind of realized that there wasn't really much of a burning platform for this kind of type of mining, the surgical mining for them, versus the types of their business models. And we've pivoted more towards the smaller scale, what they call the junior miners and sort of the mid-tier producers, where it is more of a burning platform, and we were kind of figuring that out. And that's been a huge success for us. And we've only figured that out in the last 3 to 6 months. But it's a major change for our business, because we are now getting more of that product market fit, and we're starting to figure things out, and the trajectory is starting to kind of move up fast. So that pivot, just understanding and figuring out the market and changing to a different market within mining, has been a big success for us.
So the lesson for any young people out there is don't be afraid to pivot. Listen to your market, and you're always going to have to raise money.
Exactly. Yeah. And ultimately, at the end of the day, like what we always hear from investors is investors care about what customers care about, right? Yeah. So if you figure out the markets and understand what they care about, and you can solve that, then you're going to get your investors.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's trying to get that alignment, right?
Exactly.
Multi-dimensional alignment.
Yeah.
So David, you're doing things a little bit differently, right? You're in academia, you're working, building these platforms, working with a number of mining companies. What have you learned along the way? What are the challenges, opportunities you've run into? This Mineral X is new, never been done. You're trying to help address the shortage, that's the looming shortage or help accelerate the energy transition. So what have you learned along the way? What challenges, opportunities, pivots? What can you share?
Right.
Some
So
young folks.
good question. So to answer your question, I want to first echo what Dustin has just said. So the mining world is actually, very exciting. This is also challenging. If you think, the young people out there, if you think you have a brilliant mind, join this industry. So I can give you two examples. What we have so far. For example, if the first example is like if there are, the mining industry has accumulated over the 140 years development, has accumulated huge amount of documentations and data out there. Data itself are some are biased according to one or two geologists' interpretations. Some are very uncertain. For example, if you have remote sensing data, what you have is just on the surface, but what is you're looking for is beneath the surface, and you cannot go there. So the challenge out there is actually there are a lot of uncertainty in the data and also in the prediction. It is more in terms of handling the data is more challenging than just like the conventional AI or machine learning, rendering an image or generate a 3D products or generate a video. So those kind of like incorporating those uncertain data to make reliable prediction is uncertain. And the second example is about the social and environmental impact of the mining. So we see a Tesla car on the street, we see EV, we see a wind turbine, but behind the development, what comes out before come to that stage, a huge waste are being generated for generating the metals. And those waste are actually most on the indigenous land or the land of minority people, because if you look into the deposit of the world, 6% are indigenous land or peasant land or land of the minority group. And they are taking the unfair amount of cost from energy transition. How are you going to solve the problem for them? To make a more environmental just development and also to mitigate the pollution, mitigate the soil pollution, mitigate the air pollution from the mining industry. And that is another challenge for the future that we find it's pretty exciting to do and also very meaningful to do.
Awesome. And David, what's your background? Are you a computer scientist by background?
I'm a trained geoscientist.
Okay, cool. I wasn't sure by the way you're talking. I thought maybe you're a computer scientist, but you're still located down in at Stanford.
Yeah. So my PhD, I was doing geoscience, but mostly developing these scientific tools gotcha. For ingesting the data from various domains of the geophysics and also geological world. And I did my postdoc as well with startup called Cobalt Metals, and that's developing the AI engines for the mineral prediction exploration.
Cool. So it is something really interesting about this panel itself is the diversity of your backgrounds. Geoscience, chemistry, accounting, and Greg, for lack of a better term, real estate. No, that's an important thing, right? If you want to get, a lot of people think if you're coming into the mining industry and technology, you've got to be an engineer. That's not necessarily true, right? Got to break down some of these paradigms. So we do have one question here, but before we go there, I'd like to ask Josh and Greg the same sort of thing, right? Doing this startup route is not easy. It's challenging. What have you learned from this? Pivots, challenges? Did you find opportunities in some of the challenges? So what's your journey been like a little bit?
So probably one of the most recent pivots we've had is the composition of the actual copper that we produce. So it's produced in a granular format, and sometimes these things happen to you. But over the COVID period and just after that, we were battling to the supply chain issues. We had to buy a bigger motor for agitation than we actually required, because that's all that was available. So we purchased it. And it's actually given us, the spin-off has given us a higher speed that creates a smaller crystal, and that can be used in 3D printing. So 3D metal printing is a whole new industry, and that's been quite exciting. See, using the challenge of post-COVID supply chain issues to actually come up with something that will advance the business dramatically.
So kind of like serendipitous, like you found
exactly,
you found a new potential market by accident.
Yeah.
Sorry, Josh, you're gonna add.
No, for sure. That's 100% right. And it's something that we didn't I think foresee when the company started.
Yes,
we were looking at selling the copper that we recovered from waste as a commodity, to the London Metal Exchange, certain metal traders as copper scrap. But now we see an opportunity for application of our product into a materials market, which it commands as a higher value, but there's also many different aspects that you can take the chemistry of that product, right? Different end users will require certain specifics on the material. And that's opened up now a whole can of worms in terms of R&D and directions that we can take things. But it's just part of the the excitement of a mining startup. And
again, a huge part of what you just said, you found another market, right? You've got a second market for this dust. And for your technology, is there potential markets outside of mining? I'm kind of curious.
Yeah, there are more like civil projects, tunneling projects, things like that. So yeah, I mean, it's in the back of our mind. You've got to nail one market first, but there's definitely other opportunities.
Exactly. So we do have a question here. I'm just going to read the preface and then ask the question. Many innovators rely on others, i.e. producers, to take the risk to actually implement their new technology. Potentially the risk could be very costly. How can the innovator share or mitigate the risk for implementation? So I guess that would be for Dustin. Let's start with you, and then we can go to Josh and Greg.
Yeah, I mean, for us, what we've done is we've kind of actually laid out kind of a customer journey milestone based process to kind of introduce our technology to mining companies and be able to kind of reduce risk and increase confidence over time. I mean, what we're talking about at the end of the day, this sort of gets back to some of the challenges that like it's hard tech. It's this is high capital type stuff. It's not like software, right? So you got to find companies that have a burning problem and that you can solve it, but then also be able to, at least the early adopters, spoon feed them such that they can get comfortable with it and reduce that risk and that adoption risk for them. And so we've actually put together our own customer journey process for the mining companies to be able to start by evaluating our technology on paper. By actually, we'll run an economic evaluation on putting a surgical mine in. And, so kind of doing like a scoping study so that you can see the overall economics and see whether is there potential for this deposit to begin with before we even start spending any money on it. And then once we've done that, if we cross that through that gate, then we start to introduce our one of our core pieces of technology, which is our downhole sensor that does all the mapping of the veins in high resolution. And so that technology can be more easily deployable at a more cost-effective rate to do a trial. And so they get comfortable with the fact that, okay, it's going to work in my environment. And then you can go into sort of larger kind of trial mining, which they call bulk sampling, where you're taking out some material out of the ground. And that's, kind of done on a limited basis before you go into production. So you have all these sort of milestones that along the way, and you're incrementally spending a little bit more money and at the same time understanding, the application, the value, what the risks are, how it integrates with their existing operation. These are all key questions that they're going to want to answer along the way. And if we can do it kind of these incremental pieces, it helps kind of with that risk that they're taking as they look at the new technologies. So, I mean, we do that, that's kind of the process that we go through. And then, there's obviously the cost. So, when we're looking at early adopters, we're pricing it accordingly to be able to attract them to want to take that risk. So it's not like we're going to be charging them what you would charge if it was a full commercial production retail kind of rate where we're mature for 5 or 10 years. So you got a couple different levers to pull to be able to, bring them along on that journey to get to the point of want to deploy commercially.
So the important lesson there is that there's multiple places to reduce the risk. It's not just buy our stuff. Let's start here and then incremental until you get to the full scale.
Yeah. And each of those stage gates, they have the opportunity to, to go on the off ramp, right? And not keep going. So they don't, incur all the risk and all the cost up front.
Yeah, awesome. Josh, Greg, how about you folks? How do you share and mitigate the risk with the people who are going to buy your technology?
Yeah, definitely. To add to Dustin, as you said, it is an iterative process. So maintaining that helps to mitigate risk. But also there is substantial government funding, especially in Canada, for projects that are related to critical mineral research and helping Canada transition to green and digital economy. So if someone's doing their PhD or doing anything really, and they have an idea that they feel could stand to benefit Canada and stand to benefit the industry and help with this overall goal, there's a lot of funding available there to help offset risk and help with capital expense.
Cool. So multimodal funding is another opportunity.
Yeah. One of the other things is that we find in our experience that the big mining companies, they've spent billions and billions of dollars and many years building their companies. They don't easily take a bet on a startup. And so that's the challenge. We've got the new innovation, we've got the new technology, but how do you convince them that it really works? So we've almost gone the track of build, own, operate. So we're showing that it actually works. We're funding it. And as we've de-risked it, or as we move along through the de-risking process, they're becoming more and more interested in adopting. So that's been good. The incubators, we've just graduated from CDL, the Creative Destruction Lab, and that was really useful to create credibility. We've just got into an incubator in Australia that's run by BHP, Rio Tinto, and South 32. So that's also really exciting. And that was out of hundreds and hundreds of innovators around the world, but they like what we do. It's green, it's clean, and that's the theme we're pushing. So yeah, I think that kind of sums it up. You just got to really believe in what you're doing and keep at it and until it's de-risked enough for the big end users to adopt.
And the fact what you just said, Greg, is that BHP and South 32 combined to reduce the risk with them when they're looking at companies like yours, right? So they're actually working together as well. So David, in your journeys with your application of the software, the technology, all this sort of stuff to the mining companies, have you run into challenges? Have you run into challenges trying to de-risk the price point, get them to buy into it, or is it less of a challenge for you?
It is actually a everyday challenge for us, and like how to make sure our research products can be directly used by real world. There is actually a common problem for nowadays academia or the research and development, because I mean, to the audience out there, and by the time when you get to university or by the time when you do your research project, you find out most of the research tend to formulate problems in the ideal way, which never exists in the real world. So what we do different at MineralX is we start with the real case. We don't do research in ivory tower. Instead, we ask for data. We go out, we talk to the industry, we ask them to donate data to us. And then we develop our technology on the real data. And that makes the risk actually much smaller than starting with the ideal problem. And it's not kind of like started like this, because at the beginning we were doing research in the ideal way. We were formulating problems that never exist in the real world. When we go out and implementing, there was 1 year we can kind of fixing the bug when a new situation occurred, when the new data comes in, and it was kind of a learning curve for us as well.
Cool. So academia is not challenges of getting uptake in the industry is not limited to startups. It can be with academia as well. And by going and getting data, working directly with companies, which is similar to what Dustin, Greg, and Josh said, you can actually break those things down. So we've got about 6 minutes left, and I have another question here. And again, we're hoping there's a lot of young people on the line here. So what advice would you have if you're a young person in university or even high school looking to change the world, right? You hear this about young people, we want to change the world. What advice would you have for them? And encouragement, right? We want these people in the mining industry. What advice would you have for them if they're gonna come into university, do a startup, and jump in mining? Dustin, we'll start with you.
I would say, think about advice. Coming from an accountant, if you're going to do a startup, cash is king. So, make sure that you're very aware of your spending and what your runway is, and using your money as efficiently as possible to advance your company. It's startups are an interesting spot because like you're constantly in this sort of haze of kind of unknown. Like you don't have all the answers. You're always working with imperfect information, right? And that's part of the charm of anything in a way. But it's also it's a big challenge, and you got to have the kind of character and personality to be able to deal with that, and just understand that like you learn the most by doing. Right, there's only so much analysis you can do before you actually have to get out there. And particularly for us, what we learned is like just the opportunity to speak to customers and be in the field. I mean, you get so much more out of that, and things become a whole lot more clear. So you've got to do. Sitting back and trying to just analyze everything to death is not gonna help if you're trying to do a startup. And you're essentially trying to fail fast and fail cheaply, right? That's, the learning is part of the game, right? It's the cost of doing business, and you can't be afraid to fail. And that's probably the most important thing that we talk about around here in our meetings is don't be afraid to fail. Just do it fast and do it cheap so that you can make it to the next stage. So, I mean, if you're thinking about startups in the startup world, that's kind of what I would advise. And I mean, from a mining perspective, I've been in this industry for about 20 years. There's lots of opportunity, and if you want to find a place to really make an impact, this is an industry that really needs it, and they need a lot of smart young people. It's been kind of touted as an old miners kind of old way of thinking. Well, we need a lot of new ideas and people, and it's most of our company right now is made up of data scientists, software engineers, hardware engineers. Like it's not your traditional mining company, so it's got a lot of room for a lot of different skill sets, and it needs a lot of different skill sets. So if you're thinking about where you can take your skills, the mining industry is definitely a spot you should look.
Awesome. We got 2 minutes left. So Josh, I'm going to narrow in on you for this one.
Sure.
PhD in academia, you made the jump. What advice would you have for a young person, whether university, high school, looking to do this sort of thing?
I would say stay optimistic. I think honestly, as young people, it's easy to get cynical, looking at the world, looking at the news, thinking, technology has existed for so long, all the good ideas are taken, there's nothing left for me. You really have to stay optimistic, and it may sound a little cheesy, but you have to believe in yourself. And if you have an idea and there's something that you can see fitting into, there's a gap that you can see you can address, start to work at it. And as Dustin said, if you can fail fast and you can fail cheaply and you can get through those failures, there is success on the other side of that. If you can push through, and if you can stay on the right path, there's definitely there's a way through it. Yeah.
I like the first thing you said. It reminds me of Usain Bolt. I trained 4 years for 9 seconds.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Josh, 30 seconds. Anything to add? Or sorry, Greg, anything to add to what Josh said?
The second, everything Josh just said. Believe in yourself. Don't give up. Be passionate about what you do. Get up. Be positive, and go and get it. Yeah.
Awesome, David. You got the last word here.
Right. my advice is put what you do and the big picture. We have, a lot of crises, and climate change is the biggest one. And the minerals are going to be the materials that help us to fight against the climate change. And that is the big picture, and put what you plan to do and the big picture, and you're going to contribute positively to the world future, to your future.
Awesome, gentlemen. Thank you. That brings us to time. This is really interesting. A lot of commonalities, a lot of takeaways. You don't need to be an engineer to do a startup. You can come from anywhere. Persevere, keep going, don't give up, believe in the vision, and don't be afraid to pivot. And you'd all do it again, right?
Absolutely.
Absolutely.
For sure.
So I believe we're at time. Thank you, gentlemen. This has been awesome. And if there's any follow-ups, we'll be sure to let the organizers send any follow-ups to the four of you.